Hello, good morning, everyone. Let's get started. So today we will be doing lecture 11, which is quite short compared to the stuff we did last week. And then afterwards, we will take up lab number 3. This is the week number 12, so we only have 2 more weeks to go. Last lecture next week, and then you will have the final test on week 14. Okay, so here we go. The first question is describe the key events that takes place in the diagram below related to hormonal regulation of the menstrual cycle. This is something that is discussed in substantial detail in the lecture recording. So I'm gonna try to explain it using like a simplified diagram for you. Hopefully it will make sense. Okay, so a couple of key areas in the brain. Right? We know that the hypothalamus helps regulate the hormonal secretion from the pituitary gland. Okay, so just to refresh that for you. Okay, so here is what it usually looks like. Okay, so we have the hypothalamus up here. Okay, and then down below, there is going to be the pituitary gland. Okay, so there, the pituitary gland is separated into the front part, which is right here. This is the anterior pituitary. Okay, AP. And then there is the posterior pituitary. We'll learn a lot more about this next class, but just to, give you a little bit of preview, and it also relates to what we're talking about here, is that the hypothalamus, they have 2 sets of neurons. Okay, there are neurons that will have the body in the hypothalamus, and then they extends the neuron all the way into the posterior pituitary gland, like so. Okay, so like that. Now, these neurons will produce hormones, which would then package them into little vesicles. They would transport the vesicles down the axons and all the way into the posterior pituitary gland. And those hormones will be stored at the axon terminal inside the posterior pituitary gland until it is ready to be released. Okay, so some hormones. Okay, e.g., ADH. We learn about ADH in the kidney. Okay, so antidiuretic hormones. Some hormones such as ADH are produced in the hypothalamus. And then stored and released from posterior pituitary gland. Okay. So next week you will learn, the hormones that are responsible for doing this. The other one is oxytocin, which you might have heard of. Oxytocin is responsible for uterine contraction during labor, as well as the letdown of the milk during nursing. Okay, so those are the hormones that are produced in the hypothalamus, transported down the axon in vesicles. They will be stored and released from PP, posterior pituitary. And then there are other groups of neurons, okay, and these ones, they also have the body in the hypothalamus, but then the axons are not going to go all the way to the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, so instead these neurons will secrete. Okay, so some neurons in the hypothalamus will control the release of hormones from anterior pituitary gland using, okay, so we have two types of hormones that we could use to control the anterior pituitary gland, okay? So using releasing hormone and, oops, wrong color, and inhibiting hormone. Move this guy out of the way. And inhibiting hormone. Okay, so it's kind of like, you know, green light, red light for the anterior pituitary. If the hypothalamus release a releasing hormone, that's a green light. That tells the anterior pituitary gland to go ahead and release a particular hormone. If the hypothalamus release an inhibiting hormone, that's a red light. It tells the anterior pituitary gland to stop secreting a particular hormone. Okay, so each of the hormone that is produced in the anterior pituitary gland, and there are many, okay, like we're gonna learn 6 of them. Each of those 6 hormones will have its designated releasing hormone as well as the inhibiting hormone. Okay, so it's the balancing between, you know, the level of releasing and inhibiting hormone that dictates how much, if at all, hormone is released from the anterior pituitary gland. Any questions so far from what I have explained before we move on to the next part? Okay, so related to the current unit lecture, the reproductive system, there are 2 hormones in the anterior pituitary gland that are related to reproductive system. Okay, anybody know which 2 hormones I'm talking about? The question is 2 hormones related to the reproductive system that are secreted from the anterior pituitary gland. Does anybody know what hormone I'm talking about? So Colleen said FSH, that's correct, and LH. Okay, so for those of you who need a reminder, FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, it's good to know what the hormone stands for because usually the name tells you what they do. Okay, so follicle stimulating hormone stimulate the follicle. And then the other one is LH, which is luteinizing hormone. Sorry, luteinizing hormone. Okay, it's the dominant hormone during the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. Okay, so these 2 hormones, FSH and LH, they are present in male and female, and they are produced and stored at the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, unlike the stuff in the posterior pituitary, they were produced in the hypothalamus, but then stored in the PP, in the posterior pituitary. Okay, so in order to release the FSH and the LH, right, you will need to have some kind of releasing hormone to give it the green light, right, to go ahead and release it. So in this particular case, the releasing hormone that is responsible for triggering the release of FSH and LH comes from the hypothalamus, and it's GnRH, okay, gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is called GnRH. So in the presence of GnRH, it will stimulate the release of LH and FSH from the pituitary gland. Okay, so that's the background story of the relationship between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Next week's lecture, you will learn, actually we'll learn a lot of hormones. I suggest you start, watching the recording this week because it's probably the most complicated and heavy lecture of the entire course. I mean, it's a little bit easier because now we're in online learning environment, and it's open book test, so you can have like a summary sheet of all the hormones. But imagine doing this, traditionally, right? In class, you would have to memorize all the hormones and their functions and stuff like that. So it is quite a challenge, but we are almost there. Okay, so let's take a look at what happens in the female. Okay, so female hormonal regulation, okay, of the menstrual cycle. So at the beginning, we will release a little bit of GnRH, okay, GnRH, okay, from hypothalamus. Okay, I'm going to put it here in case you need a reminder. Hypothalamus. Anything that ends with RH, right? The releasing hormone, that's going to be from the hypothalamus. Okay, so we'll be learning 2 more releasing hormone in the course. So what does the GnRH do? Well, the GnRH is going to travel through the blood to the anterior pituitary gland. And this is the green light that will tell the body to release FSH and a bit of LH. Okay, so in the first round, you're gonna have more FSH than LH. Okay, that's why I draw it a little bit smaller. Okay, so if you think about like a typical 28-day cycle, okay, I know it's not 28 for everybody, but this is the average that is being used in all the textbook. So the initial 14 days, that is called the follicular phase. Follicular phase. That is where the follicle is going to develop into the egg. And then over here, the second part, that's called the luteal phase. Luteal phase. And right in the middle, that's where ovulation occurs. Okay, so now we are talking about the follicular phase. Okay, follicular phase. Okay, so during the follicular phase, you're going to have the GnRH from the hypothalamus. It is going to stimulate the release of both FSH and LH, but more FSH, right, than LH. Okay, dominating levels of FSH. So this is from anterior pituitary gland. And so I'll give you a moment to, organize your diagrams, copy what you need to, and then we will continue in a second. And meanwhile, if you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask.
Is it I know you're probably going to get to it sooner or later, but is it the progesterone that goes and line the uterus lining?
Yeah. So that's going to thicken the endometrium.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll get there, like you said. Very good. So the FSH and the LH, what are they going to do? Well, they are going to travel to the ovary, okay? And FSH, as the name implies, it will stimulate a follicle to develop in the ovary. Okay. Now, there's a little bit of crosstalk between the 2 ovaries. If a follicle is developing in one ovary, it will tell the other one to not do that. Okay. If you have 2 follicles developing at the same time, then you might have twins, but like non-identical. Okay, because 2 separate eggs, right? So as the follicle is developing, okay, estrogen is released. Estrogen is released. Okay, this is like a condensed summary of what's going on. So estrogen is released from the developing follicle. Okay. So all this stuff that I'm writing, all this is happening at the ovary, right? Okay, at the ovaries. So now we're going to talk about what this estrogen will do. Okay. What does the estrogen do? Well, estrogen will do one of two things. It will do two things. Sorry, it will do two things. Number one, it will travel to the endometrium and it will thickens the endometrium. Okay, by promoting new blood vessels to form. Okay. It's called angiogenesis if you ever see that word. Angio is like blood vessels, genesis, creation of new blood vessels. Okay, so this will help thicken the endometrium. It will lay the groundwork for potential pregnancy. Okay, because that's where the baby's gonna implant, right? In the endometrium. The endometrium is again the inner lining of the uterus. Okay. Give me a second. I'm just gonna move this stuff on the side. I need more space. Oh, sorry. Move it over a little bit. Okay. Now, the second thing that the estrogen will do is that the estrogen will travel back to the brain. Okay, it will travel back to the brain, to the anterior pituitary gland, as well as to the hypothalamus. And they are going to engage in what we call a positive feedback. Positive feedback. Okay. So in positive feedback, the initial trigger will result in a series of events which ultimately result in an exaggeration of the original trigger. Okay. So think about like a thermostat, right? Okay, thermostat. If you set it at 20 degrees, okay, if it's too hot, then the AC comes on and it brings the temperature back down. That is an example of a negative feedback. Okay, so let's say 20 degree. Okay, and then it gets hot. So the high temperature will trigger the AC to come on, which then brings the temperature back down. That's negative control because you undo the original trigger, right? The original trigger being temperature goes up. Now, what would positive feedback look like? It's like you have a faulty thermostat or something. The temperature goes up, okay? And then instead of turning on the AC, right, the heater comes on and the temperature continues to rise, okay? So the original trigger causes a series of events that would exaggerate, that would intensify the original trigger. That's what positive feedback is, okay? So a more like tangible example of positive feedback in the body, it's like giving birth, okay? When you experience contraction, right, the body will produce hormones that will intensify the contraction. And then it will, that extra contraction will then trigger more hormone to release and then more contraction. So this intensification keeps on going on until the baby is pushed out, right? So that's an example of positive feedback. In this context, it's positive feedback because we started with increase in GnRH. Okay, I'll put an arrow here, increase in GnRH. That will cause FSH and LH to increase, and then you will have increased estrogen. And then the estrogen will cause the GnRH to further increase, okay, intensify, exaggerate the original trigger, okay? So that's what happens. And then once that happens, then now we are in the second part of our situation, okay? We're getting to the luteal phase. But first, we're gonna have increased FSH, but this time around, you're gonna have more LH, okay? And this sudden increase in LH, we call that an LH surge. Okay, the LH surge is going to result in ovulation. Ovulation. Okay, release of the egg. Release of the egg from the ovary into the, where does the egg go? Anybody know? What structure are we releasing the egg into?
The fallopian tube.
The fallopian tube is correct. Okay, or the oviduct, it's going to go in there. Okay, so that increase in LH, that's what is being tested for in ovulation kit. Okay, so if people want to find out when they're ovulating, if they want to have a pregnancy or if they want to avoid pregnancy, they want to know when they're ovulating, right? So the ovulation kit, it's basically an antibody test that checks the amount of LH in the urine over the course of a few days, and it compares it. If there is a sudden spike in LH in the urine, it's telling you that you're ovulating either today or tomorrow. Then what happens is the LH will travel to the ovary and trigger ovulation. And then what happens is after ovulation, the corpus luteum will form. Okay, the corpus luteum form from the remain from the ovulated follicle. Okay, so after releasing the egg, you have some stuff that are left over. That's the corpus luteum. And this corpus luteum will release progesterone. Okay. So what does progesterone do? Right, this is another key hormone, right? Okay. So the progesterone will further thickens the endometrium. Okay, it overlaps with the estrogen a little bit. But more importantly, now that we have an egg in the fallopian tube, we do not want to have another follicle developing. Okay, so that's why the progesterone will go back to the anterior pituitary gland, and then we'll go back to the hypothalamus, and it will have negative feedback. Negative feedback. It will stop the release of GnRH as well as FSH and LH. It suppresses it. Okay, so without the GnRH, without FSH and LH, we ensure we won't have another follicle being developed. Okay. Now, corpus luteum, this thing here, right, will break down if no pregnancy happens. If no pregnancy takes place. Okay. So it will break down in about 14 days. And here is what's going to happen. When the corpus luteum breaks down, the progesterone level will drop. When the progesterone level drops, goes down, then the negative inhibition will no longer be there, right? Okay. It is the progesterone that's stopping the GnRH and the FSH and the LH from being released. So if progesterone goes down, this inhibition is going to be lifted. And as a result, GnRH, FSH, and LH will once again start to increase, and that will begin the next follicular phase of the next cycle. And at the same time, without the progesterone supporting the endometrium is going to shed, and that results in the menses, right? That marks the beginning of the next cycle, right? So there you have it. That's basically hormonal regulation for the female. Any question at all?
So is estrogen and progesterone antagonistic hormones?
No, they're not really antagonistic. For them to be antagonistic, they would have to be doing completely opposite things, right? So, for example, like the calcitonin and the PTH that we talk about, one tells the kidney to absorb calcium, one tells the kidney to not. That's antagonistic. Here, the estrogen and the progesterone, they actually do similar things in that they both thickens the endometrium, but the difference is that estrogen is predominantly engaging in the positive feedback in the first half of the cycle, whereas progesterone is doing the negative feedback.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I do want to remind everybody, this is a simplification of what's going on, okay? So if you read online or read in textbook, that tells you something about estrogen doing other things. Like that is not wrong. It's just that we didn't talk about it, okay? Because it's really complicated. It turns out estrogen has different effects depending on whether it's high level or low level. And in fact, there are different kinds of estrogen as well that the female body makes. You might have heard of like estradiol, right? But we're gonna stick with this simplified version. Okay, everybody happy? Great. So what's gonna happen if pregnancy occurs? Okay, so in the event that the sperm fertilizes the egg, and then the egg implants into the endometrium, what's gonna happen? Well, then you will start to develop the one of the first things that's being developed after implantation is the placenta, right? Okay, but that takes a little bit of time. So what happens is after implantation, there is going to be another hormone that is going to be released. Okay, that hormone is called the HCG. Okay, human chorionic gonadotropin. Okay, never mind what it stands for because it doesn't actually tell you much about what it does. But HCG will be present only if you are pregnant, right? Okay, and that will maintain the corpus luteum a little longer until placenta is formed. Why do we want to keep the corpus luteum around if pregnancy occurs? Anybody want to answer that question for me? Why are we keeping the corpus luteum around? No? Okay. Remember, the corpus luteum is the main source of progesterone, right? And that is what's keeping the endometrium thick. So if the egg is planted in the endometrium, you don't want that endometrium to shed all of a sudden, because if it does, then the egg is gonna die, right? So you're not gonna have a successful pregnancy, right? So as the placenta is being developed, right, it's gonna pump out the HCG, which will tell the corpus luteum to stay there, keep producing that progesterone until the placenta is fully formed. Once the placenta is formed, then it will take over to produce the progesterone. Okay, so progesterone maintains progesterone level is going to be continues to be high for the remainder of the pregnancy, as well as HCG. Okay, so that's why there's no period during the pregnancy, because the progesterone not only maintains the thickness of the uterine wall, but it also exerts its negative feedback, right? So you don't get GnRH, you don't get FSH and LH, and without those hormones, there will be no follicle developing. Okay, and no eggs, no period. You won't get pregnant while you are pregnant, basically. Okay, so that's what HCG is. All right, let's do some polls and see what's going on. Where's my poll button? There it is. Go ahead. First one. Okay, good. Most of you got it right. Most of you participated anyways. Does happens in the fallopian tube. Okay. If it does not happen in the fallopian tube, then we have a potential problem. Okay, it could result in what's called an ectopic pregnancy, and that means the implantation occurs elsewhere in the reproductive system instead of the uterus. Okay, it's considered as a medical emergency because if you don't deal with that situation, and then the eggs the fertilized eggs start to develop elsewhere in the system, it could destroy the female reproductive system. Yeah, ectopic, right? Isn't that what I said? Maybe it's just my accent. Ectopic pregnancy. Yeah. Okay. So next one, the endometrium thickens in the presence of, this one's pretty straightforward. Maybe we're not going to do it. It is the estrogen and progesterone. Okay. Let's try this one. Go ahead. Okay, so if you have increased progesterone, it will have a negative feedback back to the AP and the hypothalamus, which will result in a decrease in FSH, a decrease in LH, and that's pretty much it. Okay, HCG will not necessarily increase or decrease because of progesterone. HCG will only come if a pregnancy occurs, right? And the developing placenta is going to be pumping those out. Okay, let's do another one. Anyone else? Okay, ovulation kit, right? What triggers ovulation? Let's go back and take a look at what we said. Ovulation. Ovulation is triggered by LH surge, right? So the ovulation kit is going to test for the presence of LH in the urine. So the correct answer is luteinizing hormone. Okay. Pregnancy kit, on the other hand, it checks for HCG, okay, in the urine, okay? HCG. So make sure you know the difference. Okay. Any questions before we move on? No, no question. Okay, very briefly, let's go through the male situation. Okay, so male. Choose a thicker pen here. Male. Okay, so same thing. Male, we have the increase in GnRH. Okay, again, from the hypothalamus, and then that's gonna go and stimulate the release of FSH and LH, right? Okay, so we're gonna do it in two. You know what? Let me think about how to do this. Okay, so we're gonna release the FSH. Okay, let's talk about FSH first. It's not as complicated. I don't know if that's the right word. Complicated as the female cycle. Many things happen simultaneously in the male situation. Okay, which makes it a little bit simpler. So follicle stimulating hormone, right? So essentially, the follicle stimulating hormone in female stimulate oogenesis, right? Okay, the development of an egg, right? So in male, instead of oogenesis, that is going to stimulate spermatogenesis. Okay, so FSH is going to go to the testicles. Okay, so this is going to be in the testis. In the testis, and the FSH is going to promote spermatogenesis. Okay, promote. Oops. Okay, and as this is happening, there is going to be like a feedback loop that goes back to suppress these things. Okay, and the hormones that is involved here is something called inhibin. Okay, so you don't want to waste resources making too much. You know, as long as the level is at a homeostasis level, you want to inhibit it. Okay, and in addition to FSH, there is also the LH. And then what LH does is it will travel to the testis and it will promote the release of testosterone. Okay, so the spermatogenesis, they are from what's called like the Sertoli cells. Sertoli cells. And then the release of testosterone is from what's called like the Leydig cells, okay, or testosterone producing cells. Okay, and what this does is the testosterone will actually help reinforce the spermatogenesis. Okay, and at the same time, it will also go back and inhibit. Okay, so we join these loops and then it will inhibit the GnRH and the FSH. So that's basically it. Okay. Any question? All right. Let's go back to the thing here. This diagram is labeled in one of the videos. You can watch it. The graph differs a little bit from maybe a textbook or from the PowerPoint, but it conveys similar information. Okay. The hormone table also filled out in the video. I think it's part 4 of the video. You can watch that and fill it in. And you know, if I were you and I'm studying for this, I would you know, print out these blank charts and try to fill it in myself after studying. because it's not just this unit, right? You also have some hormones from, from the bones and stuff, right? The PTH, calcitonin. It's good to have a little hormone booklet that you keep, which will be useful as well when you move on to your next program, okay? Whatever that is. Okay, fill in the blanks. The uterine lining. What do we call the uterine lining of the uterus? The
Endometrium.
that's right, the endometrium. Okay, endo is within, right? Next, the fallopian tube. Is the tube that connects ovary to the uterus. The smooth muscle of the uterus is called the myometrium. Okay, this theme is probably like you will recognize this, right? It's reoccurring, just like the heart, we call it like the myocardium, the endocardium, right? Okay. The cervix is the lowest portion of the uterus. And when there is pregnancy, there's a plug that forms that seals the opening so that nothing goes in, nothing comes out. Something is a hormone secreted from hypothalamus. This is the GnRH. It regulates the release of FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. The corpus luteum is a transient structure in the uterus that secretes the hormone progesterone. A surge of LH triggers ovulation. Something is a hormone produced by developing placenta. That's the HCG. The process of sperm production is called spermatogenesis. Okay, as opposed to in female is oogenesis, right? Okay, both are triggered by FSH. The three major glands that contribute to the formation of semen are prostate, seminal vesicle, and the last one is the bulbal urethra, or sometimes called like the Cowper's gland. All right. Okay, let's take a look at some of these application questions. They are pretty long, but I'll read it to you. Theon is upset about his low sperm count and decides to buy testosterone supplements online. He took twice the recommended dose. The supplements increased his libido and made him feel more masculine. After taking the supplements for a few months, he went to his doctor to do another sperm count. How do you think the sperm count results will be? Justify your answer using proper physiology, terminologies, and concepts. What do you think? Do you think his sperm count is gonna go up, stays the same, or go down? Why? Does anybody want to tell me? Will taking the testosterone supplement help with the spermatogenesis? That's basically what the question is asking.
No, it wouldn't, because the testosterone decreased the GnRH release.
Exactly. If we look at our feedback loop here, yes, some testosterone will promote spermatogenesis, but if you overdose on this stuff, if you take it when your body doesn't really need it, then the excess testosterone will actually exaggerate this inhibition, okay? which is essentially like a handbrake and on the whole situation. Okay, like driving, you slam on the brake and then you pull the handbrake, nothing moves. So with the excess testosterone, the negative feedback loop will be very strong. As such, you will lower GnRH, lower FSH, lower LH, which ultimately kind of throw your system out of balance. Okay, so you would expect him to have low sperm count. Okay, so you really shouldn't be taking testosterone unless recommended by your doctor. Okay, so some people take testosterone after when they're getting older, and some testosterone supplement is going to bring back their strength and younger self, so to speak. But generally speaking, it's not something you should order online and take. Next one, we have this thing here, and I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a levonorgestrel, maybe levonorgestrel. Is synthetic progesterone sold under the brand name Plan B. It is commonly known as the morning after pill, which prevents pregnancy after unprotected sex. Statistically, an estimated 0.6 to 2.6% of women who take the morning after pill after unprotected sex will still get pregnant. On the product's website, it explains this is not an abortion pill. Based on your knowledge of female reproductive system, explain how Plan B cannot prevent pregnancy 100% and why taking it will not cause an abortion if you are already pregnant when you take the pill. Okay, so this is an interesting question. Again, I open up the floor to everybody. Participate a little bit. Let me know what you think. You will only see me for one more week and I'll be out of your lives. So humor me, answer me, give me some suggestions. No suggestions? All right, I'll answer my own question then. So essentially, when a person takes this pill, you are synthetically boosting up your progesterone level. Okay, so this results in an increase in progesterone level in the body. What does that do? Well, increased progesterone will reinforce the negative feedback loop, right? Okay, so if we look at here, right, the progesterone will suppress GnRH, suppress FSH and LH. Okay, so if the person hasn't ovulated yet, then taking this pill will delay the ovulation process. Okay, so the person had unprotected sex. There's going to be sperm in the body, and if you haven't ovulated yet, you want to stop the ovulation. You don't want the egg to come out. Okay, so the sperm will not be able to find the egg, and then there will be no pregnancy. Okay, but how come people can still get pregnant? Well, if ovulation already occurred, then taking the pill is not going to prevent pregnancy. If you already have an egg in your system, elevating the progesterone will not reverse that process, right? Okay, the high progesterone only suppress the secretion of FSH and LH, but if ovulation already took place, then your progesterone level is going to be high naturally anyways. So taking this will not have any benefit. Okay, and if the egg is already in the system, then fertilization could take place and pregnancy can still occur, which is why this is not an abortion pill, because this does nothing to prevent the implantation. Okay, it just further increases your progesterone, which will do no harm to the fertilized egg at all. Does that make sense? Any question about what I just said? I said a lot of things, but does that answer this question? Do I have I don't have a question for that, but yeah, rest assured, something like this will be asked on the final test. Okay, there's another one. Clomiphene, I think that's how you pronounce this one. Clomiphene citrate is used to induce ovulation in some forms of infertility. Its function is similar to GnRH. Explain how clomiphene can induce ovulation. Well, if its function is similar to GnRH, then it's understandable, right? The GnRH will then increase the FSH and the LH, which would then cause the follicle to develop, right? And then you know, the whole cycle thing continues with the ovulation and stuff like that. This will increase the chance of having twins by roughly 10%, which also makes sense because now you have basically increased level of GnRH more so than what a normal person would have, and it's possible to have more than one follicle being developed at the same time. Okay, so that's how it is related. Okay, here is another application question. In an experiment, rat ovaries were removed immediately after impregnation, so after pregnancy, and then the rats were divided into two groups. Treatments and results are summarized in the table here. Propose an explanation for the results and write a conclusion for the experiment. So let's take a look at what happens here. Okay, so group one here. Okay, both of these groups, the ovaries are removed. Okay, and then what happens? If in group one, the daily injection of progesterone is 0.25 compared to 2 milligrams. Okay, so very little in group one and then a lot in group two. You can see none of the rats in group one that are receiving low doses of progesterone carries the fetus to birth, whereas in group two, 100% of the rats were able to carry the fetus to birth, despite the fact that there were no ovaries. Okay, so what's the explanation? Well, the explanation is that immediately after impregnation, the placenta is not fully formed yet. Okay, so we still need to have the corpus luteum. We still need the corpus luteum to pump out the progesterone. Okay, but if you remove the ovaries, then the source of the progesterone is gone, right? The natural source of progesterone is gone. And so if you don't give them the progesterone injection, right, the endometrium will not be maintained. And without the endometrium, the lining sheds and the implanted egg will not be able to develop. Okay, so that's why with the injection of the progesterone, even without the ovary, they're still going to be able to carry the fetuses to birth. All right. So that's it. There you have it. 4 questions here. Any anything you want to ask before we go take up the lab? No questions. All right, maybe we'll take about like 5 minutes just for you to rest up a little bit, and then we'll take up the lab. If you don't have the lab, you can go to the homepage of the course. Let me show you where that is. Right here, right? You can just click on the online lab 3 and it will take you right there. So you want to have a copy in front of you, digital or physical, as we take it up. Okay. I will see you all in about 5 minutes. Hello again. Let's keep going. So this lab is worth 5% as opposed to 2.5%, because it's gonna have a lot of information, but also it's going to have the microscope slide from all the lectures. Okay, so you know how in every lab there are these microscope slides, right? So you haven't been tested on those yet for Unit 1 and Unit 2, and those are going to be on for the final lab quiz. Okay, so make sure you gather all these microscope slides and you are able to tell which one is which, and you know what is it that you're looking at exactly. Okay. I mean, still you're gonna have two attempts, and let me see when the lab test is gonna be.
I think on 14 probably.
14, yeah, probably you're right. But let's just make sure. Right here. Yeah. So it's gonna be like 1 day before the test. And another thing is I know that you guys have chemistry tests also on Wednesday, right? Is that correct? Do you guys know yet for your chemistry tests?
I'm not sure.
I think so. Okay, someone told me that the final chemistry test is on the same day as the anatomy quiz. I spoke with your chemistry teacher, Temjit, and I am going to make our test available from Tuesday all the way to Wednesday. Okay, he probably will do the same, but he will announce it maybe later. So that way you can choose to do the test in the order that makes sense to you. Okay, some people are better at chemistry, so they might want to do that first and then leave the anatomy for 15. Some people are better in anatomy than chemistry, so they might want to do it in the backwards order. Okay, I will make the official announcement later on in week 13. I'll post it, but for now, you know, hopefully knowing that will give you a little bit of peace of mind. All right. I might also move the lab quiz a little bit earlier. You know, maybe on the Friday, so you have the weekend open to it, and you know, just it's probably a little bit better in terms of, you know, helping you organize the stuff. You know, for the lab for the quiz 3, for the renal quiz that you guys just did, even though I gave you guys 2 chances, a lot of you, not necessarily the 8 of you here who are here, but then, you know, people who might not be here, a lot of you did the 2 attempts in succession. Okay, so I see people logging in at 10 o'clock, and then they finish the first attempt at 10:30, and then immediately they try the second attempt. That is not the good strategy. Okay, if you are able to do it, I suggest you do it like early in the morning, and then, you know, you look at the results, and you know, if the results are not good, then you can study throughout the day before you try it again, right? The chances of you getting a higher grade if you do 2 attempts back to back is very, very low. Okay, in fact, some people did worse in their second attempt than the first if they, you know, when they did it back to back. Anyways, so that could be your strategy for lab number 3. It is 5%, so you might want to do it first, and then you know, try it again a couple days later. All right. Hopefully that is beneficial for you by moving the dates. Anyway, here we go. On the kidney, this is a frontal section of the kidney, and let's label all these things. All right. So A over here, A is going to be the adrenal cortex. Okay. So the adrenal gland, it's like a little head that sits on top of your kidney, and the outside is adrenal cortex, while the inside is adrenal medulla. Okay.
Is the adrenal medulla also known as the adrenal gland?
No, the whole thing is the adrenal gland.
The whole thing, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So like the whole thing is watermelon. The cortex is the green part. The medulla is the red part.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, C here is the renal pyramid. Renal pyramid, which is part of your medulla, right? Part of the renal medulla. Okay, the other part of the renal medulla is H, right? Which is the renal column. Okay, renal column. So together they make up the renal medulla. What else do we have? I here, I is the outside, so that's the renal cortex. Okay. Any organ that has an outer layer and an inner layer, it's always cortex on the outside and medulla on the inside. F is the renal artery. G is the renal vein. E over here, E is the ureter. Okay. J here is the renal pelvis. Okay. And D is just referring to the casing. So that would be the renal capsule. Okay, so a couple other things that you probably might notice. That's the papilla, minor calyx outside, and the major calyx. Okay. Just stop me if I'm going too fast or if you have questions. What hormone is secreted from A? So from A, it secretes aldosterone. Okay, aldosterone. That regulate blood osmolarity. Regulate blood sodium, right? Okay, you will learn next class that this also secretes something called cortisol. Okay, and that is for long-term stress hormone. Okay, while we are at it, we might as well talk about the medulla as well. The medulla secretes epinephrine. Another word for epinephrine is adrenaline, the one that probably people are more familiar with. And related to epinephrine is norepinephrine. They basically do the same thing, okay? Or noradrenaline. So these are for immediate stress, fight or flight, right? Okay. Fight or flight response. What blood vessels does F branch off from? That is the renal, the abdominal aorta. And the ureter will connect to urinary bladder. Okay. All right, here we go. Kidney. Locate each of the following on the model. So renal pyramid, that's like this thing, right? Oops, what happens to my pen? Pen. Let me choose a color that stands out a little bit, maybe. See, maybe this stands out. Okay, so there is the renal pyramid. That's a pyramid. That's a pyramid. These like, shell-looking stuff, right? That's the renal pyramid. Renal papilla is at the tip. That's the papilla. Okay, another papilla here. Segmental artery. That's right here. That's the segmental artery. Interlobar artery or vein, okay, that's the one that goes up on the side, right? Like this one right here, that's traveling up the edge of your pyramid. And there's another one right here, right? So those are the interlobar. The RQA is the one that is on the outer edge. That's this one, RQA. And then all these stuffs that are coming out, all these things that are coming off from the RQA artery, that's the cortical radii artery. And the veins are not joined, but it will be like right beside it. Okay. Now, just to tell you a little bit more detail, the sideway ones, the ones that are going perpendicular to these cortical radii arteries, those are the afferent arterial. And the little ball here, the little ball, those balls are the glomerulus. Okay. So that's the kidney. Okay. This is a kidney slide. Does anyone know what this is? What we're looking at here? This structure here, A.
Is it a glomerulus?
That is the glomerulus. Very good. That is the glomerulus. Okay, so this here surrounding the glomerulus, that is the Bowman's capsule. Bowman's capsule. Okay, so all the stuff that gets filters out from the glomerulus will be captured by the Bowman's capsule. Okay, so of course, together, Bowman's capsule plus glomerulus, that is the renal corpuscle. The renal corpuscle. That is where glomerular filtration takes place, the very first step in urine production. Now, C is a little bit hard to visualize, but they are all part of the proximal tubule. Okay, so, you know, imagine it comes out and then it curls in. Right, so I try to draw this a little bit 3D for you. Okay, so maybe this goes behind the page and then it loops back out like this, right? You see, and then it's gonna come out of the page and then come to here and then goes back in, right? So like that. It's just like a bunch of tubes that are twisted in and out of the page. That's why you only see the lumen. That's why you only see the center. So C is the proximal tubule. And you're like, how do you know it's proximal tubule and not like distal tubules? Well, because we are closer to the beginning of the nephron, right? We're closer to the glomerulus. Okay. We have something like this in the lab. Actually, it's pretty cool. You can see that this is the capsule, and you know, if this word wasn't there, which it wouldn't be on the in the microscope slide that you see in the lab. One of the questions I asked you is, are you looking at the cortex or the medulla? Well, the answer is you're looking at the cortex because you see all these glomerulus, right? Okay, glomerulus are only found in the cortex and not the medulla. Okay, so only part of the loop of Henle goes down to the medulla, as well as the collecting duct, right? Okay. All right, that's it for kidney. Label the skull. Okay, so A is the frontal bone. Frontal bone. Right here, frontal. Okay. It forms the top of your eye socket, right? Remember? Okay, so this whole thing, that's the frontal bone. G is the maxilla. Maxilla, okay, forms a groove for your upper row of teeth socket. Okay, a little bit of the bottom and a little bit of the middle as well. Okay, so, oops, sorry, it's more like right here. Okay. You can use the program I gave you last time to see exactly the shape. There's your maxilla. And C, the only movable bone in the head, mandible. Mandible, your lower jaw. All right, here we gotta label all the eye parts. So A is frontal, and the color tells you which part of the orbit it forms. Right? Orbit is your eye socket. B is the butterfly, right? That goes from one side to the other, and then you see the hole for the optic nerve to go through, and that is the sphenoid bone. C forms the side and your cheekbone, so that's the zygomatic. D is your maxilla. E is hard to see, but it's like just this little bit right here. That's the palatine. Okay. Remember in class I told you the palatine, it's like more like a L shape, right? That's kind of have a flat bottom, and that forms your hard palate, right? So this is palatine. F, anybody remember what F is? Remember there are 3 bones that forms the medial side of your eye socket, right? So at the front, we have the maxilla. Behind it, we have the necromal. There are 2 necromal bones. And then G, which is behind it, it's the ethmoid bone, just 1. Okay, so there you go. 7 bones that makes up your orbit, your eye socket. Okay, let's take a look at here. B, that is the cheekbone, so zygomatic. H is pointing at the necromal bone that I was talking about. Necromal bone. K, right here, it goes from this side all the way through the eye to the other. That's the sphenoid. D is the temporal bone. The temporal bone. Okay, right here. If you touch the back of a ear, okay, at the back of a ear, there is a little knob at the back. Okay, like if you touch like right here, like at the back of the ear, like right here, that knob that you're feeling, that's this knob right here. Okay, of your temporal bone. That's the mastoid process. Okay, and it connects. There's a muscle that connects from here all the way to your sternum. Okay. What about L here? Can someone tell me what L is? It's part of your temporal bone. But what is that?
I'm not sure. Is it petrous part?
Is it what part? Sorry.
Petra's part of temporal? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's part of the ear. Okay, so
Parts
that
of the
is
temporomandibular joint, I think, right?
no, that's actually not where the joint is, like right here, right? Okay, that the empty joint you're talking about, MTJ. This here is actually the ear canal. Okay, ear canal, right? The auditory canal. All right. Okay, label F. F is talking about this hole. We talked about this hole last time. That is the foramen. Foramen is a hole, magnum, big hole. That's what this means. Okay. And then on the this should be a inferior view. Sorry, inferior view from the bottom. So there are these two round knobs at the bottom. Those are called the occipital condyle. And what do they articulate with? It articulates with the atlas. Okay, C1. Allows nodding of the head. So if you're nodding your head, these condyles are moving back and forth in the grooves of C1. What structure goes through F? Well, that is where the spinal cord and the medulla, right? Medulla oblongata becomes the spinal cord. Okay. And here is I think I missed that. That is the palatine. The bottom of the palatine anyways. And then this is going to go up, right, to form that little chip in your orbit, in your eye socket. And of course, in front of it, that's the maxilla, right? Right. This is the right arm anterior view. Okay. So humerus. That's the forearm, right? The chicken wing, I keep on saying. So that is the radius. The radius is the one that is on the same side as your thumb. Okay. The thumb is the short one, right? Okay. The one that only has you know, 2 phalanges as opposed to 3. And this would be the ulna. Okay. Of course, here you have the hinge joint, right? But you knew that already. Okay, let's zoom in on the hand. Oh, there's the answer. This is the hand. Okay. A, these are carpals. Carpals. Okay. Carpals, right? People you carpool with. Carpals. Carpals. 8 in total. B, they are the back of your hand, right, if you would. Those are the metacarpals. 5 in total. And then these ones, the phalanges. 15. 14, rather, sorry. Okay. 3 for each of the 4 fingers, and then 2 for your thumb. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on and so forth. 14 in total. Phalanges. Okay, label the vertebrae. These are your cervical. Okay. So C1 and C2 specifically, right? The atlas and the axis. Okay. You know, at the back here, these things, those are the spinous process. Okay. It's the ones that you feel if you run your fingers along the middle of your back. Right. This disc here, that's the intervertebral disc. Okay. It cushions the two vertebrae. Okay. And on the side, that's where the intervertebral foramen is. Okay. So that's where spinal nerve emerges. And that's where they come out of. Right. So these are the thoracic. And then this one at the bottom, that's the lumbar. Okay, of course, you have 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, and 5 lumbar. Okay. So this is a closer view of the C1, right? This entire thing here with the
Can you go back one just to the
yeah,
next
sure,
slide
sure.
for a minute?
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
here, yeah. Okay. So here we have the C1 and C2, right? C1 and C2. C1 is the atlas, right? Okay, so these grooves, that's where the occipital condyle will sit on, right? So remember those two things here? The two round knobs at the bottom of the skull, those will sit right on these little grooves. Okay, they are actually called the superior articulate surface. Okay, so what does it articulate with? Occipital condyle from the occipital bone. Okay. So C2 is this one that is like with the little protruding thing, right? That goes through the hole in C1. Okay, so this here, B is the axis, right? Okay, but this particular protruding knob, that's called the dens of C2, okay, of axis. Okay. So it goes through the center of C1. The center of C1 is just the vertebral canal. Okay, and it forms a pivot joint, of course. Pivot joint. Okay, moving on. This is another closer view of the spinal cord, right? So we have the spinous process here again, spinous process at the back. In this view, you can see clearly how A is fitting with C. So A is the inferior articular process, whereas C is the superior articulate process. Okay, so if you focus on this vertebrae here, okay, like this guy, right? That's the inferior articular process, and then this would be the superior articular process of the same one. Okay, we've already labeled D before is the intervertebral discs. And you see the pole that goes through the entire thing. Let me go back here. Like this pole that goes through the center, that would have been like the spinal cord in real life. Okay. Okay, moving on. This is the rib cage. So D is the clavicle. Yeah, that's our classroom for those of you who've never been to Ashton B. E is the scapula. And here we have our sternum. Okay, so A is the manubrium. B is the body. And C, which should probably be a little bit down, that's the xiphoid process. Okay, so together they make up the sternum. F is the cartilage. So we call that the costocartilage. All right. I think that's all. Okay. Label A. A is the clap.
Can you go back one slide? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so over here, this is the shoulder girdle. Shoulder girdle. Again, you see the clavicle. This whole thing is the scapula, right? Your shoulder blades. And on the lateral surface of the scapula, that's where you will have the glenoid process. Forms a ball and socket joint with the head of humerus. And so this is humerus, right? And here the head of the humerus, basically like the end part of the humerus, will fit right into here. And the whole shoulder is stabilized by ligaments. Ligaments connects bone to bone, as well as it will be stabilized by other type of connective tissue, right? Your deltoid, your muscle, your deltoid is your shoulder muscle, basically, right? It helps stabilize this whole area. Okay. Moving on. Just let me know if you need me to go back, okay? What's going on here? We have to count the true ribs. Okay, so how many pair of true ribs are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these are true ribs because they have their own costal cartilage, right? Okay, so you can see rib number 1 here connects to kind of like the junction of the manubrium and the body, right? Okay, and 2 to 7 connects to the body of the sternum. And then the false ribs. False ribs. Okay, false ribs will be the rest, 8 to 12. Okay. So I don't know if it's possible to see from this one, but that would be 12, 11. Okay. There is number 10. Okay. And 9 would be on top of it. Okay. And then 8, you can kind of see like a faint bit here from this angle. Okay. So those don't have their own costal cartilage. So the costal cartilage of number 8 will merge with the costal cartilage of number 7 before going to the sternum. Okay. So 11 and 12, they are floating. Floating ribs. No costal cartilage. Okay. Usually after this, skeleton model class, a lot of people like to take selfie with it when we are actually in class. But that was 2 years ago, if you can believe it. Moving on. This is the pelvic, okay, pelvic girdle, okay, the pelvis. What do we have? Well, A here, we have a piece of lumbar vertebrae. Okay, vertebrae, singular, vertebrae, it's a plural. And C, that is the sacrum. Okay, ilium here with the iliac crest. E is the pubis. And connecting one pubis to the other on the other side is this cartilage right here in between. That is the pubis symphysis. F is the third bone. That is the ischium. So ilium, pubis, and ischium, that forms the coxal bone. Okay, so one coxal bone on each side, okay, or coxa. Okay, there's a hole here for the blood vessels and nerves and all this stuff to go through. That is the obturator foramen. Okay. I will give you a moment to copy everything. Okay. Lateral view. Is this the right half or the left half? What do you guys say? Are we looking the right coxa or the left coxa?
Left.
This is the left, and how do you tell?
Sorry?
How do you know it's left?
Because I can see the acetabulum facing on the left side like this way.
Okay. Anyone else? Does everybody agree that it's the left side, or anyone else saying it's different? Okay, so yeah, this is the acetabulum, which is where the head of the humerus is going to fit in. But then we also have to see here, right? That's the tailbone, right? That's the coccyx bone, which means this here is the back, and that here is the front. Okay, So we are actually looking at the left coxa. The right coxa, I'm sorry, right coxa. Right coxal bone. Okay, so think about it, right? This is the back, this is the front, and this is the side, right? This is where your
I
right.
did not see the second one actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. So that's where the right leg is gonna fit in. Okay, so B is called the acetabulum. Acetabulum. And C is what we are sitting on right now, unless you're standing. That is the ischio tuberosity. Tuberosity just means like a round, knobby thing. There you go. So you can see why this lab quiz is like 5%, right? It's so much stuff. So much stuff. But you'll do well, no doubt. Any question before we move on? Okay. The need. The need. What do we have for the need? Well, in addition to the bones, we also have some ligaments here. Okay. So A here, that is the femur, the lower part of the femur anyways. And we have the a special ligament, okay, that goes from the knee, the femur, all the way to the tibia. And within the ligament, the bone inside here, that's the patella. Patella. PA, sorry, patella. Okay. And you have, a bunch of other ligaments that help stabilize the knee. We will not worry about those. And over here, C, that's the fibula. So we have the main weight-bearing bone, the tibia, and then we have the fibula. Okay. We're almost there. I know this is very, very dry, but it's the best we could do with a simulated lab. Okay. Over here, A. A is the talus, which is part of your tarsals. B is your heel bone or calcaneus. And basically all these, including the talus and the calcaneus, all these things, they are your tarsals. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tarsals. Okay. Just like the hand we have the carpals, right? But there were 8 carpals. Now we only have 7 tarsals. These are the metatarsals. And again, phalanges. Okay. Bone slide. Let's take a look at these. Okay. So the entire thing, right? This is like a thin slice of bone, right? It's actually pretty cool. This whole thing is an osteon, okay, which is the structural unit. Structural unit of compact bone. What is compact bone, you ask? Well, if you think about the long bone, okay, if I take a slice from the diaphysis, right, it will look like this. It will look like a row of tissue paper. Okay, so the inside, that is where your bone marrow is going to be. Bone marrow. And then the outer fringes, that's where your compact bones will be. As you get closer and closer to the bone marrow, then it becomes spongy bones, right? Spongy bones. So these are like with more holes in it. Okay, so those are spongy bones. So if I take a look at the compact bone, you will see all these rings, all these osteons. Okay, so that's one of those osteons. In the center of the osteon, you will have the central canal. Central canal. Not to be confused with the medullary canal. Okay, where the bone marrow is. I'll label it for you. That is the medullary canal. Okay. So again, here's the toilet paper, right? So this would be like if you cut the diaphysis of the long bone, and then you look at the center. The center right here, that's where the bone marrow is. This is the medullary canal. Okay, the compact bone would be all over this outer edge. Okay, the closer you get to the medullary canal, they become spongy bones. Remember those osteoclasts? The osteoclasts will break down the bone in the center and redistribute it on the edges, so the osteoblasts can build more, right? So that is called like remodeling. All right, what else do we see? We see these little pockets everywhere. Those pockets, they are called the lacuna. Who came up with these names? Lacuna. Okay, with an E for plural. That's where the bone cells live. Okay, and radiating all these lines that you see that are coming out from it. Okay, so I think that's what this line is pointing at. I'm pointing at all these lines. Those are the calcaneus. Sorry, I got confused with the with the hue for some reason. That's the caniculi. Caniculi. Okay, caniculus, US for singular. Okay, and then caniculi. Okay, so like if this is the lacuna, the caniculi will be coming like this, kind of like a bug, if you would. Okay, like that. And then the bone cells will live in there. Okay, and everything else that makes up the compact bone, right? The calcified matrix, right? The calcium, the phosphate, all that stuff, that's the lamina. Okay, lamina. And I think that's what this is trying to point at. Lamina. Again, E, if you add an E, it will be plural. So that is your compact bone. Finally, that's it for the bone. Okay. Oh, I gave you the answer again. I don't know why I did that. I probably forgot to delete it. That's fine. Moving on. We have the male reproductive system. Okay. So let's take a look at what we have. Number one here. Number one, that is the, I don't know why my pen keep on disappearing. Number one is the testicle. One. Okay, or testis. Number two, like sits on top of the testicle. That is the epididymis. That is where the sperm have swimming lesson. That's where they learn how to become mobile, and they will be stored there until they're released. Number three, that's this long tube. Okay, there are two, one on each side. That is the vas deferens. When someone has a vasectomy, that is the one that is being cut. Okay, so afterwards, there will be no more sperm in the semen. That is the type of birth control that some men decide to have. Number 5 is talking about this gland right here, and you have 2 of those, one on each side. That is the seminal vesicle, which produce a fructose-rich solution for the sperm, to nourish the sperm. Okay. Number 6. Number 7. Number 7 is right here. This whole structure, that's the prostate gland. Okay. Provides a bulk of the volume of the semen, makes it basic because the vagina is acidic and it will kill the sperm otherwise. So the basic solution will help neutralize that. So the prostate gland, the urethra actually goes right through it, as well as the vas deferens will go right through it, like a straw through an orange, if you can, if you want to visualize that. Number 8 is this little bulb right here. That is the bulbourethral gland. Also creates a little bit of a basic solution that helps flush the urethra, okay, before the ejaculation, because there might be some remaining urine in the urethra, which would, interfere, which would maybe harm the sperm. So by flushing it first, right, it deals with that problem. Okay, so that's the bulbourethral gland. Next one, label the following numbers. 28. 28 is right here. That is the urinary bladder. Okay, so some people say if you have frequent urination all of a sudden out of nowhere and you're like a little bit older man, you might want to get your prostate checked out. Okay, because if the prostate is inflamed, it could exert pressure on the urinary bladder and cause frequent urination. 34. Okay, 34 is the pubis symphysis. Okay, remember, that's the bone, cartilage more. That's the cartilage that allows the 2 pubis to connect together, right? I'll just quickly go back to show you right here. That's the pubis symphysis. Okay, at the front, connecting the pubis from one side to the other. And we are looking at the mid-sagittal section. So you can see the pubis symphysis right here. All right. Number 30. Number 30 is the rectum. Number 9. Where is number 9? Oh, right here. Sorry. Number 9 is the urethra. And number 16 down here, that is the scrotum. If it's too cold, then the scrotum contracts and pulls the testicle closer to the body to keep it warm. If it's too hot, it descends, right? It pulls it away from the body. Right? You need to have the right temperature to optimize spermatogenesis. Okay, this is what the testicle looks like under the microscope. So over here, that is that whole thing right here. That is a seminiferous tubule. Oh my goodness, you cannot see yellow. Choose green. Seminiferous tubule. Okay, so like, this is the testicle, and inside the testicle is actually separated into these lobes, if you would. Okay, and then inside there's all these like noodles looking thing, right? I think in the PowerPoint slide I said it's kind of like instant noodles. They all twist together like that. So if you take one out, right, that's one of the tubes. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Okay, that's the cross section of one of those tubes. And you would have all the germ cells on the outer edge. And then as they undergo meiosis, they will migrate towards the middle. So all these lines that you see, right? These are the sperm tails. Okay, so all these lines, that's the mature sperm, maturing sperm. Okay, and when they're done, they will break off from the wall, and they will travel through the tubes all the way to the epididymis, where they will again become mobile. Okay, where they will learn how to swim. All right. Okay, next we have the female reproductive system. Number one is the ovary. Number two is the fallopian tube. Number three, that's the little hair structure that guides the egg into the fallopian tube. It's called the fimbriae. Number eight, that's the top part of the uterus, which is called the fundus. Fundus. Seven is the myometrium, the muscle of the uterus. Number six is the bottom, right, of the uterus, the cervix. And I talk about the plug that seals it when a person is pregnant. So you can see the uterus is on top of the urinary bladder, right? So as the gestation goes on, it gets bigger and bigger, it presses on the bladder, and you know, frequent urination. What else? There is number 9, which is right here. That's the vagina. That's it. Okay, next one. 21. That's a urinary bladder. Uh, 22 is pointing at this line right here. That is urethra. (25) rectum. 26. I can't find 20. Is that 26?
Isn't that the anus?
Yeah, okay. I just couldn't find a number. Yeah, but you're right. That's the anus. That's 26. Thank you. 31. Here we see this again, the pubis symphysis, right? Or pubis symphysis. Uh, 29. 29 is the round ligament. Okay. As the baby grows in uterus, it gets heavier and heavier. So the round ligament kind of hold the uterus in place so it doesn't like descend, fall down. Okay. 35 is just the spinal cord. All right. And I think that's it. That's it for all the slides. Okay. So that's it for this week. Thank you for coming as usual. And we will meet again next week for the last lecture. Okay. Y'all have a good week. See you later.